In 1998, Germany experienced one of the deadliest train disasters in history.
A high-speed intercity express train derailed, striking an overpass and causing it to collapse onto the train, killing 101 people and severely injuring 88 others.
Today we will examine what exactly happened during the incident, as well as the events leading up to the failure and the consequences of this horrific accident.
In the late morning of June 3, 1998, ICE Train 884 carried 287 passengers and 6 crew members on its routine trip from Munich to Hamburg. The train was traveling at over 125 miles per hour as it passed through the town of Celle on the final leg of its 6-hour journey, 80 miles from Hamburg. Suddenly, the outer tire of one of the wheels of the first coach broke off from the rest of the wheel, becoming flattened and shooting up into the car, nearly striking 2 passengers. One of the passengers went over to the third coach to alert the conductor, while the embedded steel tire continued to drag along the ground, damaging the tracks and creating violent vibrations in the car. The conductor came to the first coach to investigate the problem, but did not pull the emergency brake. At this moment, the tire struck the guide rail of a track switch, causing the rear set of wheels on the first coach to lift up off the tracks and derail the train. This derailed car struck the lever of the next track switch, changing the direction of the rails. The rear wheels of the third coach followed this new direction, forcing the car sideways into the supporting pillars of an overpass. The fourth coach, derailed by the motion of the third, passed under the collapsing bridge and tumbled off the tracks, instantly killing 2 Deutsche Bahn track workers. The fifth and sixth coaches were crushed by the bridge, and the remaining cars jackknifed into each other and slammed into the wreckage. The locomotive and the first 2 coaches came to a stop 2 miles ahead after the emergency brake was triggered automatically.
As we saw from our simulation, the point of failure that caused the disaster was a faulty wheel that was ignored during inspection. The train that was involved was the German ICE, or Intercity Express train. This train was introduced in 1988 and had 14 cars. Immediately after the train was introduced, many passengers started to complain about the lack of comfort, especially in the restaurant car. After an investigation was conducted, the problem was traced to the car's monoblock steel wheels. These wheels were casted from a single block of steel. One wheel specifically developed a lot of metal fatigue, and the wheels were not perfectly round, which resulted in greater vibrations at the speed that this train was traveling at. In 1991, the German National Railway contacted the chairman of the board to try to solve the problem and to avoid damaging the image of the National Railway's prestige project and the trains themselves. Some ideas were presented to combat the vibrations and noise, but the board decided that the solutions were too expensive. The solution that the National Railway proposed was a new wheel taken from a tram, with a 20mm rubber cushion providing a certain degree of dampening, which was not found in the prior monoblock wheels. In 1997, the National Railway was warned by the tram company about the shortened life expectancy of these wheels and was instructed to replace these new wheels more frequently. The railway declined to do this, citing the difference between the ICE trains and the trams.
Many parties were at fault in this scenario through the extensive amount of time leading up to the disaster. The first major party at fault is the conductor. As the train began to sway side to side, the conductor, rather than pull the emergency brake, decided to move along and investigate the wheel that nearly killed Mr. Dittman's wife and son. The train derailed before they were able to investigate. The second party at fault was the train company, Deutsche Bahn, the owners of the high-speed intercity trains. The monoblock wheels were apparent that the design could warrant metal fatigue and could potentially lead to disintegration of the wheel. However, the owners of the train company left it up to the engineers to fix the problem, noticing that it could become an issue in the future. The third party at fault was the engineers. When given the job to fix the vibration in the wheels, they decided to put an insulating rubber ring to dampen such vibrations. The solution worked until the rubber seals could not hold up with the extensive amount of time at high speeds. This was because of the lack of testing leading up to the solution being put in place and little to no high-speed testing for the implication in a high-speed train. The ethics involved with the different parties at fault are different and the same, ranging in severity and in greater terms of cause and effect consequences. The conductor chose to look at the damage himself rather than trust the passenger. This may have led to the demise of half the people on the train. In hindsight, it's not known whether the emergency brake would have been effective enough at slowing the train before the junction. The fact that the train was already swaying in an abnormal amount should have given the conductor the inclination to stop the train. Another option could have been Mr. Dittman stopping the train, but the emergency brake wasn't made available to passengers for obvious reasons. Ethically, the train company had some major issues and some major strides. Yes, they told the engineers to fix the monoblock wheels, but they didn't give enough time or resources to test the new wheels at high speeds that these trains would be traveling at. Finally, the engineers were the final party at fault, and ethically plenty worse than either of the other parties. While they solved the problem with the shaking of the cart, they failed to fix the wheel decay or even attempt to test these wheels at high speeds that was needed to accurately measure the load and torque of a train full of people moving at 150 miles per hour. The most ethically wrong thing that they did was sign off on the wheels to be used in production.
After lengthy and unproductive legal proceedings, settlements totaling the equivalent of $38.8 million were paid by Deutsche Bahn to the injured after the disaster, with an additional $17,500 being paid to each of the families of the dead. To the disappointment of the families of the dead and of the injured, the engineers being tried for negligent manslaughter were only fined $12,000 each, as they blamed their superiors for the disaster. The wheel design responsible for the disaster was taken out of service a week after the disaster, and replaced with the monoblock wheels that preceded it. Immediately after the disaster, new, easily breakable emergency exit windows replaced the difficult-to-break windows present on all Deutsche Bahn trains. This horrendous disaster has taught us a lot about taking engineering safety precautions seriously. Thank you for watching.